Joe Castiglianone, the athletic director of Oklahoma, longtime and longest tenured athletic director in the world of college athletics, is stepping down after this college year. He is still going to be a part of the program and the university, but he is going to have a more limited role. This is massive because of Castiglianone has really been the predecessor of what has been the financial standpoint of Oklahoma football and Oklahoma athletics. Where this program has gone in the last 3 decades is largely due to his impact, his role, his pressure and persistence on building great facilities, more so just outside of college football. There's a lot of things that go into this, and you and I were talking about this off air. This is really big for 2 main people. Number one, the next athletic director, because if whoever comes in understands what the standard is of Oklahoma, they're not going to sit by idly and be content with 6-6 and turning it into Nebraska 2.0 when they left the Big 12 and joined the Big 10. And this is also really big for Brent Venables because if the new athletic director is going to want to bring in his people. So Brent Venables is going to have to show this upcoming year, it's not just about the X's and O's. It's not just about me landing the right type of recruits. It's about me fitting the culture and the identity of what this new program is going to be in college football, especially when it comes to the SEC and a program like Oklahoma.
Isn't it interesting, Cole, that 2 years in a row now, Oklahoma has made major waves going into SEC Media Days? You remember this time last year, the week, I believe it was the week before Media Days, we were talking about the big contract extension and the raise that Brent Venables got. And now, almost just a year to the date later, we're talking about Castiglianone hanging it up. At some point, I think that's what's really interesting is the timing because, I think some people, and I commented about this on social media, of course, I think some people they didn't really understand where I was coming from just when I said, how does this affect the seat of Brent Venables? And they said essentially, well, you can get a new AD and they're get a new coach, but they didn't put a date on when this is going to happen. So like, what does that mean during the school year? Is this going to be in September, October? Is this going to happen till next year? Because a new coach is going to want to know who they're working for. That's the biggest thing. Like typically you're changing one or the other. You're not changing both simultaneously. So, but again, at the same time, we're talking about this, and this is a whole separate conversation we'll probably have at some point talking about coaches' hot seats going into the 2025 season. I mean, you think to the contract extension they gave Brent Venables, and it's going to be much more difficult to make a move than maybe I think some. It kind of almost feels like the conversation we were having last year about Billy Napier, Cole, to a degree, where it sounded really easy in conversation to kind of draw up a scenario where he was fired. But when you looked at the numbers and what they were going to owe, it became a lot more complicated. So I think the hope, obviously, is just that Brent Venables in Oklahoma, they have a season where we're not even remotely having this conversation. They go win, 8+ games, 9+ games, certainly. And Brent Venables reassures us all that he is the guy. But, yeah, Castiglianone, he's had a good tenure. Again, I think some definitely raised an eyebrow when the extension was given last year. But at the same time, I think Oklahoma wanted to put together, and we talked about it last year, a solid front going into the SEC that, hey, we have our guy. Now, hindsight's 2020. Do you wish you wouldn't have done that? I think there's probably some of the fan base certainly that feels that way. But, yeah, it's just going to be interesting as far as – I think it's a great idea to give the school the heads up. So he's trying to do the best thing he possibly can to put OU in the best possible position to be successful and not be blindsided by it. But, yeah, when you've got a coach in Venables' position, I do think it's kind of an interesting dynamic just because of that specifically.
The other thing that's really influential here is like Gene Smith did this with Ohio State. He kind of let people know that this was his last year. They went out and they hired Ross Bjork. They allowed Bjork to get onto campus and figure out what his role was going to be. And then eventually he took over as the new full-time AD when June 1st came around. So maybe we could see that. Maybe it's a full year and the next athletic director is leaving their current school. But this is, again, an SEC channel. And not a lot of people were paying attention to Oklahoma when they were in the Big 12. Joe Castiglianone truly is a innovator of college athletics and his impact. And as somebody that grew up in Big 12 country because of that, where Texas was and Texas A&M was, I've gotten to see Joe Castiglianone since he was hired in 1998 rejuvenate literally one of the most historic programs in college football. He was massively influential in hiring Bob Stoops that led them to the 13-0 season and the Big 12 title with the national championship win over Florida State when he was in the Big 12. They had 18 winning seasons, 10 Big 12 titles, 11 top 10 finishes. Lee was very, very much on board when Lincoln Riley took on over, and Riley carried the torch. We can make fun of what he's doing out in Southern California right now and how he's got to get his crap together with the defense and the certain recruits that he goes after. But keep in mind, Oklahoma, death taxes and Lincoln Riley going to Arlington was a guarantee almost every year, and a Heisman Trophy quarterback was being produced, or at least a Heisman caliber one. And Castiglianone really put an influence on that. They went to 2 college football playoff appearances. They also were really influential in basketball. They had multiple top-tier recruits. Blake Griffin came there, and they were supposed to be one of the bigger programs at the time. Baseball has always been one of their bread and butters. And then college softball. When we think of the growing element that is college softball, most people turn to Oklahoma because of what Patty Gasco has done. And again, that is another Joe Castiglianone hire. And so the way that he has really been a pioneer for multiple sports and setting a certain tone and demeanor, it's a very tall task to replace. This is not going to be a job where somebody comes on in and doesn't understand what the expectation is and what kind of shoes they fill. Castiglianone is not the Nick Saban of athletic directors by any means, but he is very much in that same vicinity of it is extremely hard to duplicate. And if you try to do it the exact same way, you're going to fail. Like that is just going to be a problem for you. So it's a changing at times. Last year during the July 1st, when we did our predictions video, I actually said the first prediction was Joe Castiglianone will retire within the next 2 years. And so here it is. I hate being right, but I just kind of figured that 28 years of service, this is going to be a change. Do you have any early names that you look at for new athletic directors? I mean, Zach Selman's the one that most people are going to turn to.
Right. That's the one I was going to go to and say that most people are throwing out there is Zach Selman, I think, because of the obvious ties to Norman. So, I mean, that's outside of that, there's nobody in particular that I've heard or really seen, or I haven't done admittedly much digging on this, but yeah, it's going to be a really important hire. There's no question, Cole. I mean, listen, I think that most people, let's be honest, most people can't really tell you the day-to-day responsibilities of an athletic director outside of like putting together schedules and stuff like that. But that's a very important role now, especially in this new era of college athletics. And you think about the organizational changes that Oklahoma has had solely with Jim Nagy coming on over.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a huge hire, but there's been a lot of movement, I feel like, behind the scenes there. And certainly Oklahoma, we all know about, where they are from a football program perspective. It's a big hire from them just from the, I'm not saying they're in any sort of danger, but they're in a very interesting position, I think, across the board when it comes to just their pecking order in the SEC. Football, we know what happened last year. Basketball had an very okay season, and baseball was solid, but no postseason success. So, yeah, I'll be curious who they go towards. I mean, I would expect them to make a splash of a kind of hire, but, the way that you mentioned it, the way the Oklahoma program and Oklahoma athletics is revered and held in such high regard, you would have to imagine they will treat the next hiring of the next AD in that type of manner.
I got 2 more for you. So Selman naturally is the one. I think, and I said this a few years ago when he took the Mississippi State job to replace Scott Strickland. I thought that was like a test for him to get his kind of teeth cut at a smaller program before he was given a bigger job. Like that was kind of like, do you remember when we were growing up and we heard that Mac Brown had named Will Muschamp his successor at Texas, and then he never stepped down, so eventually he took the Florida job. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what the Zach Selman thing feels like. You go to OU, you go to Mississippi State to learn what an athletic director's true duties are, making these type of critical hires, going out and building a foundation, understanding what it takes for NIL and booster and fundraising. And so that makes sense, but there's 2 other names I think are going to draw on a lot of interest. First one, it's Ren Baker from West Virginia. This is a guy that has Oklahoma ties. He's from the state. He worked at Rogers State University. He worked at Memphis. He worked at Mizzou. He eventually went on to North Texas as athletic director before he eventually took over in 2019, 2020. One of the big things that he had was renovating the entire UNT athletic facilities. He was very influential on getting them into a bigger conference. He was very influential on making sure that they were a player in Conference USA. He was really, really big in making sure that they brought in the right names when they let go of Bobby Huggins this past year and when they decided to move off of Neil Brown to bring back Rich Rodriguez. So he knows what it comes to when it's about building an environment. He also understands kind of the job when you're expected to be a big time player in sports and you got to hit the reset button. Because again, you don't know how much longer Skip Johnson's going to be there for baseball. You don't know how much longer Porter Moser's going to be there for basketball. You don't know what's going to happen with Brent Venables. So he may be starting fresh. He's done it before. He's been able to sell the identity of a program. I think that's going to be a big thing. And then the other name that I think is going to really draw an interest because of his previous relationship working with Joe Castiglianone, it's Kirby Hocutt for Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech right now has been probably the biggest story in college sports because of what they're doing in the NIL front and the guaranteed contracts. A lot of these deals I don't think get done without Kirby Hocutt's approval and with his impact on what the university is. And so that means a lot when it comes to seeing how he has built the basketball program up. He's made baseball extremely relevant over the last few years. They've been to multiple College World Series appearances. They've been to multiple Sweet 16 appearances, Elite 8 appearances. Oklahoma wants to be a basketball school. You know, Kirby Hocutt's done that. He's been very influential in the college football playoff legacy. And then remember, he was there from 1999 to 2005. Really helped out with the big investments for campaigning. According to reports from Yahoo Sports, $3.4 million was the annual revenue that was being brought in. He helped it raise up to over $17 million. And he also has been, again, a huge influence on this new era of what is college athletics. And I want to say this because of maybe this is just me kind of looking further ahead. The thing that I would really love about Kirby Hocutt, if he was the hire, Chris, they usually like to make their next head coach hire. So I'm not ready to say that BV is going to be gone. But what I am going to say is Joey McGuire is a really awesome dude. And if he can prove that winning is possible out in Lubbock this year and that he is built to actually be a high-rising official in this sport, he's one of the nicest people. Like, this is a first-round grade, can't miss, go get a cup of coffee with, go out drinking with, take you to lunch. He makes you feel like you're his best friend. And it doesn't take much to sell Oklahoma with the history and the pageantry and what is the aura and the atmosphere on College game day. It's like, if you want to go completely change it from defense to offense, go get yourself a guy like Joey McGuire who constantly, you hear from these recruits, some of these kids are not committing to Texas Tech because of financial reasons, but most of them are committing because of they really want to play for a guy like Joey McGuire. And that's like a way to just kill two birds with one stone, especially if you're Jim Nagy and you see more consistency when it comes to the results kind of paving the way from NIL to transfer portal, all working together, because you're probably going to bat the back end a lot of talent this past offseason. Next offseason.
Yeah, I'm curious about the timing. I wonder what the timing's going to look like. How quickly do they move on this? If the season gets off to a less than stellar start, is there a sense of urgency there baked in because they feel like they might be making a move? I wonder about that. So
everything's possible.